So recently I got a question regarding how can I minimize age-related mitochondrial decline? This is a very loaded and pointed question. It requires me to make a lot of assumptions that one understands cell biology first and foremost. So what I'm going to do is aid and kind of guide that assumption with the graphic. In the bottom right-hand side of that graphic, you see what's really the electron transport chain and the Krebs cycle, and this is all about energy production. So if you understand what's happening there, and even if you don't, the big takeaway is you have a lot of what we call redox reactions, and there's a lot of that's just reduction and oxidation. The oxidation piece is key here because you're going to have electrons that ultimately will escape the electron transport chain. And when they do, they bind to the free oxygen that's in the cell and they create these superoxide radicals. And that results in more oxidative stress. Your mitochondria, your cells have means by which to deal with this. But as you get older, they can't neutralize those reactive oxygen species nearly as well. And so that results in more oxidative stress. When you have an imbalance is when you end up with all the cellular damage that is associated with this oxidative stress that causes cellular dysfunction, tissue dysfunction, ultimately leads to organ failure and disease. You can't maintain homeostasis. You end up with chronic inflammatory, responses, which are all detrimental. No matter what your objective is, they all will make it harder and cause serious health problems, ultimately. So that's why it matters. What do we do about it? The interventions really should be broken off into, the natural approach and then the pharmaceutical medical intervention side. We're going to keep them separate. We're going to focus on a natural intervention. The first thing I would say is you have supplementation. We don't want to harp on that too much. That requires its own video. There are things you can take like carnitine, riboflavin, CoQ10, but there's a lot that needs to go into that supplement conversation that we just don't have time to cover here. So there's a few. There's not an exhaustive list by any means. The other portions of this for nutrition are simple. You can increase your antioxidant intake. Things like blueberries, for example. This will aid your body in dealing with these free radicals and neutralizing them. So the more effective one, I would argue, is caloric restriction. And caloric restriction, if you do that in somewhere within the range of 20 to 40% of lower than your normal intake, will reduce oxidative stress. It will stimulate or enhance mitochondrial biogenesis, which is just the creation of new mitochondria. And the mitochondria you end up producing are more efficient in terms of ATP production. They have optimal oxidative capacity, and they generate less reactive oxygen species because they're more efficient. And the other one now steps outside of the nutritional realm, the dietary realm, and takes us into exercise. This is the other really big one, and you really want to combine these together. But what you'll find, because the individual that asked me this is a slightly older individual, excuse me, I want to start by saying there's a lot of strong evidence that exercise training can optimize mitochondrial function in elderly individuals. That is a big deal, right? Because typically as you age, you don't optimize, you actually regress. So introducing this along with caloric restriction will be huge because they share some of the same outcomes. For example, exercise will also stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis and improve oxidative capacity, but it also improves protein quality control. So when we look at things like human skeletal muscle, you'll see that along with the caloric restriction, you optimize the oxidative capacity in the skeletal muscle. So at the end of the day, the increased physical activity reduces the rate of mitochondrial decline and attenuates age-related phenotype. That is where a lot of people are really looking for, because phenotype is just the expression of, right? So when we start talking about the anti-aging domain, that is a big piece of this. So that when we talk about cellular damage, it's relative to the cell type. Are we talking about, your skin? Are we talking about your liver? Are we talking about your muscle? So that's where this really comes into play. I hope this is helpful. Feel free to hit me up with more questions. I'll try to address as many as I can on here.